Weighing in on the big news that the FBI is about to release their notes and findings from Hillary Clinton's email investigation. The White House says they were in no way consulted about whether or not this would happen or anything else that is Hillary related. Hello, everybody. I'm Martha MacCallum. So the big news, the FBI's announcement coming as Hillary Clinton loses a bit of her lead to Donald Trump in the national polling. And he is now threatening perhaps to deal her a larger setback. At least that's what he hopes. Can she combat that? We've got Team Fox coverage for you on the campaign trail. Mike Emanuel and Carl Cameron standing by with the latest from each of the campaigns. But first, we go to Catherine Herridge, Chief Intelligence Correspondent, with the very latest on the FBI Hillary Clinton investigation, live for us in Washington this afternoon. Hi, Catherine.
Well, thanks, Martha. Fox News has confirmed that the Bureau will release portions of the Clinton FBI file, and it could happen as early as this week, possibly tomorrow. As you mentioned a short time ago, the FBI said, rather the White House said, they were not involved in the decision.
I can tell you that the White House did not consult with the FBI about that decision or any of the other decisions that they've made in terms of handling some of the investigative material that they've collected when they looked into this matter. With regard to the potential impact on the election, there are any number of people that are employed by your news organizations that will speculate about the potential political impact or political fallout. I'll let them do that.
For context, the FBI does not routinely record interviews, and when Clinton was questioned at FBI headquarters over the July 4th weekend, that was also the case. The summary of Clinton's interview is known by the FBI Code 302. We do not expect to see the interview summaries from her aides. When these records went to Congress earlier this month, Republican lawmakers said the questioning never fully addressed why she had a separate personal system for government business.
Remember, James Comey said she was not indicted because he didn't have sufficient evidence on the issue of intent. I didn't see any questions on the issue of intent. There's no question she handled them negligently or extremely carelessly. He said he didn't go forward with charges because she didn't have specific criminal intent. I didn't see any questions on that. She said she did it for convenience, but I didn't see the follow-up questions in the interview I read.
The FBI is not publicly commenting, but reporters are being told the review process is ongoing. And, of course, that was your terrific interview, Martha, that made all the news on the subject last week.
Well, it is a fascinating topic, what is in those notes and what is in that summary. So it sounds like we, when you say portions, it doesn't sound like we are going to get much, but I guess we don't know, Catherine. And the FBI director has no response so far?
Well, before the news became public this afternoon, the FBI director was speaking at a cybersecurity conference this morning, and at one point he made a joke about the question and answer portion.
I'd like to take your questions, and I'm hoping you're going to think up a question that has nothing to do with Secretary Clinton's emails.
Makes you wonder whether he knew what was coming later today. In any event, he then addressed the more serious issue of the increasingly aggressive foreign hackers and the targeting of 2 state voter registration databases.
We take very seriously any effort by any actor, including nation states, maybe especially nation states, that moves beyond the collection of information about our country and that offers the prospect of an effort to influence the conduct of affairs in our country, whether that's an election or something else.
Just a couple final points on the FBI investigative file. Portions of this file are getting released now, not because the FBI thought it was a good idea to do that for transparency. It's because there have been multiple Freedom of Information Act requests that essentially have forced the Bureau's hand. And also remember, what went to Capitol Hill, and these are people with security clearances, they complained that key sections were blacked out. And what we can expect, based on my experience, is that what is released publicly will have even more redactions or sections blacked out, which will leave a lot of guessing and then probably even more criticism as well, unfortunately.
I think a lot of people have the very basic question about why what Hillary Clinton said in that exchange with the FBI, if there is nothing to hide, why it would be so redacted and so secretive.
This keeps going.
It sure does. And you are on it. Catherine, thank you very much.
Right, you're welcome.
So as Hillary Clinton faces sort of a steady drip, drip, drip of the news about her emails, she has been slipping in some of the polls. We're going to get polls all throughout this period, and we got some more of them today. So senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel live with the very latest in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where Clinton's running mate Tim Kaine is holding a rally today. Hello, good afternoon, Mike.
Well, hi, Martha. Yeah, it's interesting here in Pennsylvania because it's thought with Donald Trump appearing to connect with white working-class voters, the fight here in Pennsylvania could really turn out to be quite a battle. The new Monmouth poll out this afternoon reveals Hillary Clinton with an 8-point lead over Donald Trump, with Libertarian Gary Johnson running a distant third at 6% and Green Party candidate Jill Stein at 1%. So you have Clinton's running mate Tim Kaine out on the stump here in Pennsylvania, making several stops today. Already he's hitting Donald Trump, suggesting that he is hiding something by not releasing his taxes, and also claiming that Donald Trump has a cozy relationship with Russia. Martha?
So what have we learned today about the Clinton team in terms of what they're trying to do for the first presidential debate? Both teams getting ready and getting some good advice, right?
Well, that's right. A Democratic source outside the Clinton campaign confirms to Fox News that the Clinton team is essentially looking for Donald Trump's deepest insecurities, trying to bait him into making some blunders on the first presidential debate stage. And so that source notes that the Clinton team has a large team digging into 4 decades worth of Donald Trump's records, looking for any nuggets that might potentially embarrass him, might fluster him on the debate stage. Our Democratic source notes, as an example, back in late February, when then Senator Marco Rubio mocked the size of Donald Trump's hands, getting under his skin and knocking Trump off his game. The source notes that Trump may be prepared for an attack on a business bankruptcy, but there may be more personal and sensitive items out there that could potentially knock him off his game. Martha?
Fascinating piece today. Mike, thank you very much. So let's talk about this story with Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of NBN and a former Bill Clinton campaign advisor, and Larry O'Connor, host of Mornings on the Mall on WMAL in Washington and editor at large for Hider.com. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have both of you with us, Simon and Larry. So, Simon, let me go to you first. You saw the New York Times piece this morning that they have a team of people in the Clinton camp who are digging through Donald Trump's past statements, past debates, sifting through, trying to find what were the triggers, what set him off, what got under his skin, and how can she do the same? What do you think about all that?
Well, listen, I think Donald Trump was a ferocious debater in the primaries. It was a critical part of how he won the Republican primary. I think Hillary Clinton is preparing for what will be very difficult debates. And I think Donald Trump, frankly, if he's half the man that we all think he is, he shouldn't really be worried about debating Hillary Clinton. I mean, he handled very tough candidates in the primary. He knew that he had to debate Hillary. I think these are going to be very tough-minded debates with large audiences. Is going to be a really important part of the campaign as we go forward.
Larry, what do you? It sounds to me like Simon is lowering expectations on the Clinton side a little bit there. That's what we call that. So,
smart
what do
for
you
him
think?
to do that, Martha. Well, it's smart for him to do that because the expectations are huge for Hillary Clinton. Let's face it. We've been told that she's the smartest, most experienced, most qualified person to ever run for president in the history of our nation. She's been preparing for this moment. She's been preparing since she gave her college commencement address, which was, what, 50, 60 years ago? So all eyes are on her. That leaves very little room for error. Donald Trump, on the other hand, we know is a political neophyte. And, yeah, he's not going to be your standard politician. And who knows what, in God's name, he's going to do at the debates. And that's what's worrying Team Clinton.
It's going to be fascinating.
You know, she's sort of programmed, you know, and as soon as he starts to throw a wild card in there, it could throw her off.
I mean, I can't imagine anybody that doesn't want to watch this, right? I mean, think about this. And here's a bit of what Donald Trump had to say about prepping for the debates. He says, quote, "I believe you can prep too much for these things, and it can be dangerous. You can sound scripted or phony, like you're trying to be someone you're not." And the word on his side of the camp, Simon, is that he's not doing the traditional sort of, you know, get somebody up at the other podium, have them field questions with you, kind of go through the whole thing and see what it feels like. He seems to be resisting that, at least at this point.
Listen, I think the Trump campaign has a real conundrum here, right? Because when Donald is Donald, right, he's authentic and passionate and he's, you know, combative and all the things that we've grown to either admire or not admire of him in the last few months. When he reads from a teleprompter and he sort of does the scripted stuff, he sounds like a much less effective candidate. So I think from a management standpoint, this is going to be tough for them to reconcile. He's going to have to be both more substantive, frankly, than he's been, but also they've got to let Donald be Donald, I think, or he won't be effective on stage.
Oh, I mean, these two people are so different. They couldn't be more different in so many ways. But I want to get one more. Go ahead, real quick. I want to squeeze one more.
Just this quick thing about some sort of way to trigger Donald Trump, this whole idea that you can trigger him. Last week, Hillary Clinton basically called him the Grand Cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan, which, ironically, ironically, is actually the title of her mentor, Senator Robert Byrd. So I don't know what they can throw at him at this point that might trigger him. They've already thrown everything at him last week in that ridiculous speech calling all Republicans racist. So it'll be fun to watch, Martha.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what both sides comes loaded for bear with, no doubt. In the New York Times today, in an editorial board piece, they went after Hillary Clinton's ties to the Clinton Foundation and said a wiser course would be to ban contributions from foreign or corporate entities now. In other words, I'm, inputting my own here, but Bill Clinton said they would do it after she was elected. They go on to say achieving true distance from the foundation is an ethical imperative for Mrs. Clinton. Simon, do you expect them to go ahead and do that?
I don't know, but I think they're going to give it a lot of thought because in about a month there's going to be a 3-day Clinton CGI event around the United Nations, and so there's going to be enormous attention on the Clinton Foundation. And I think if they're going to do anything, they've got to do it now. It's got to be decisive and definitive. And frankly, I think cutting off, I'm just going to say this, I think cutting off corporate and foreign donations now would be a smart move, and I hope they do it right away.
Larry, what do you think they're going to do?
Well, yeah, just like they were supposed to do it when she became Secretary of State. And now, finally, after getting to her emails that she kept private from the American people, we're learning that there was no firewall. If there was a firewall between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department, that firewall was made of rags dipped in gasoline and old newspapers. So, yes, of course they should do that. They have treated the Clinton Foundation for the last 10 years as a campaign fundraising apparatus. Donna Brazile, your interim chairwoman, basically admitted that over the weekend, Simon. So this thing is ugly and disgusting and corrupt from day one.
Either, it's going to come down to whether or not they think it's an election issue, because when she became Secretary of State, there was no election necessary. So the division was not as imperative as it may become now, especially if she sees that this is tightening. So it's going to be fascinating. And that's a great point about the UN CGI meeting coming up. Simon and Larry, thank you guys. Good to see you both.
Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you.
Trump is gearing up for a very big speech tomorrow on immigration in Arizona is where he's going to do that. He is first, though, on the West Coast today. He's holding a fundraiser in California. That gets underway in a little bit under an hour, we are told. Tonight, he's got a rally. He loves to do those rallies. That's happening in the state that a Republican Party doesn't usually win. He will be in Washington. So what's the meaning of that? What's he got planned? Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is there for us in Everett, Washington. So, Carl, the Trump campaign is talking up this big immigration speech tomorrow. What do we know about that, and what do we know about today?
Well, the fundraising is because we are 10 weeks from the election. People will be voting 10 weeks from today across the country, and that means it's crunch time, not only to collect some cash, but also to start really seriously thinking about their voter composite and what their constituency is really going to look like. Donald Trump and Republicans know that it's going to be necessary to expand his support beyond just the base of the Republican Party. He's going to need swing voters. He's going to need some disaffected conservative Democrats, and he's going to need those never-Trumpers to come back into the party and unite if he hopes to be victorious Election Day 10 weeks from now. That's why this immigration speech is so big. For the last 3.5 weeks, Trump has been wavering back and forth on the 3 key issues of his immigration policy. 1, the ban on Muslims. That's now been changed to extreme vetting. 2, the deportation of the 11-plus undocumented immigrants living in this country right now. He said that he might soften that and then said that there would be no legalization, but hasn't said what would happen to people who choose not to seek legalization, whether they would be allowed to stay in the country or whether they'd be deported. That's an open question. And then finally, the question of what he will do about the wall has even come into doubt. Trump himself has pointed out that there are mountains on the Mexico-U.S. border, and it would be impractical to build a wall in some of those places, and technology might be better. That's a lot different from the border-to-border wall that he was talking about from the Pacific to the Gulf over the course of the last year. How he works those out may make the difference between the level of support he gets from base conservatives and his ability to court swing voters necessary to win the election. So there's a lot riding on it, and that comes tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Martha?
10 weeks to go. Carl, thank you very much. Who retweeted a cartoon of Hillary Clinton in blackface, got a lot of heat for it, and is apologizing for that part of his actions online. But Pastor Mark Burns says that he still very much supports the underlying message that that image stood for. He believes that Clinton is a bad choice for black voters. I spoke with him this morning on America's Newsroom. Watch.
I believe the Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party has pandered after the African American community and will use that voting bloc just to get elected, while giving policies that are color specific, but not creating policies that will create prosperity.
I am joined now by Dr. Ben Carson, former Republican presidential candidate and now a Donald Trump supporter. Dr. Carson, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Martha.
You have been speaking in a very similar way for a very long time and challenging a lot of sort of democratic ideology in terms of the best way to help African Americans in this country. So do you think that Pastor Burns needed to apologize for the Hillary Clinton cartoon or any of the underlying sentiment?
Well, it would have been probably better just to stay away from that kind of inflammatory material, simply because it detracts from the argument. Not so much that it may be inaccurate, but why get involved in another brouhaha when there are so many important things to actually talk about? And when it comes to the African American community, there are some real problems there. And that's what Donald Trump has been trying to explain to people. But, you know, in the past, people have used flowery language and tried to be politically correct. And he's going to the heart of the matter and really talking about the issues that are weakening that segment of our society, because you can't make America great again if you have large pockets of dysfunction.
You know, when you listen to what he said, he got hammered on another channel on the morning show. I mean, they went after him when he was on their set. Basically, you know, I think that it's incomprehensible to them that there could be someone who is a black man from African-American community who is in support of Donald Trump. And you can obviously understand some of what he's going through. Why is that so hard for some people to understand?
Because there's been so much long-term propaganda trying to rewrite history. You know, I wish the Republicans and Donald Trump would spend a lot more time talking about the history of the Republican Party, which started as an abolitionist party, and the Democrats, you know, who were the party of slavery and Jim Crow and segregation, and, you know, who tried to stop the civil rights movement, the laws and the voting laws. And then they say, oh, well, you know, it was really the Democrats who turned into the Republicans. And, you know, they did a switch. What a bunch of crap. You know, and I hope people will go back and actually read for themselves and find out that it was only about 1 or 2% of people who were engaged in the party switch. And, you know, the Democrats have continued to take advantage of the African-American community. And, you know, this propaganda, which starts at a very early age, creating dependency. Black people do not need the Democratic Party. They don't need the government at all. You know, when you look at the fact that in the black community there's over $1 trillion of assets, you learn how to turn those dollars over and then reach back and pull others along. These are the things that we need to be talking about. But in the meantime, empowerment zones, utilizing some of that tremendous amount of money that's overseas because of our high corporate tax rates for enterprise zones and to create jobs. You know, these are the kinds of things that will make a difference. And you'll hear... Okay.
We just have another minute or so left, but are you going to go into some of these inner city areas with Donald Trump? And how do you think that's going to work? I mean, how do you expect him to reach people in this community when there is so much divisiveness? And do you think he can be successful at that? It's really has never been tried in that way before by a Republican candidate.
Well, there's no question that the progressive movement thrives on division. That's how they derive their power. But, you know, Donald Trump has started already talking about these issues, so I think there will be some receptivity when we go into those communities and begin to actually lay out programs that make sense. And people are smart enough to actually listen and not be driven by a herd mentality.
When is that going to happen?
Well, it's going to start this Saturday in my hometown of Detroit, which, as you know, used to be the most prosperous city in America. But after 40, 50, 60 years of progressive domination is in terrible shape now.
I think that's going to be fascinating to watch. Thank you very much, Dr. Carson. Very good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
You too.
So Judicial Watch, one of the groups that is following up on the Clinton email investigation, has announced that they have submitted their written questions to Hillary Clinton. She has to respond under oath with written answers by September the 29th. So we'll stay on that story as well. Chief Correspondent and Editor-at-Large for Mashable, Lance, welcome. Good to have you here today. I just want to put up on the screen this quote from Michelle Reagan, who's the Secretary of State in Arizona. She says, oh, is this on tape? Let's play it.
Our entire voter registration database offline so it could be inspected by a cybersecurity team. So the best of our knowledge and the best of their knowledge, no information was either hacked or stolen or compromised from our database.
So what's the concern here, and how real is it, and how would it work? Could somebody hack into the election system?
Well, Joe, I mean, the election system is kind of a really broad term, but there's certainly a concern here because these are the systems that feed into our voting system, right? These are the voter registration rolls, the databases. When people go online sometimes and they register there, they register in different ways, and those are systems that are actually sometimes connected to the internet, as we saw with Arizona. And this brute force attack where they just kept hammering to find basically some kind of vulnerability till they could get in. We don't know what they did once they got in there. They may not have pulled anything. But I've actually been talking for the last few weeks. I've been talking to a bunch of voting experts about this and about, what are they really concerned about. And this is exactly what they said. They're not concerned about the place where you go to place your vote. They're concerned about everything that feeds into that because the voting booths are not connected to the internet at all, whether or not they're digital or not. And in fact, most of the voting systems have shifted away from direct electronic input to what's called the paper and then scan system. So those are actually more safe, but it's everything leading up to that. And the other big concern is that there are so many different ways for outside actors to potentially disrupt an election that have nothing to do with the vote count.
Like what?
Well, for example, if they hacked into a system to send a text to a bunch of people in a particular polling place, and they said, there's violence at the polls. And so everybody goes, I'm staying home. And that's not actually happening, but now they've disrupted it, and maybe they wait hours, and maybe they don't go back at all. So there's that point-by-point disruption. But it's so important to remember that it is so difficult for anyone to disrupt en masse the entire election system because it's not all connected. Right. It's all disparate.
It's concerning, though. And should people be concerned about registering online? I mean, you want people to register, obviously, but you're saying their information could be compromised.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security has been talking to states and saying, look, you've got to get on this. You've all got to be paying attention here. We want to help. We want to make sure that your systems are secure. And I think citizens kind of have to do the same. They have to be asking questions about their district and say, how are you doing this? A lot of people still go to the polling place, though, and it's that book. It's that physical book, which, by the way, is not hackable. It cracks
me up. I know. But you see your name and the handwritten years ago. It's very it feels kind of primitive, but you're making it sound like it might be the best way to go. Lance, thank you very much. Good to see you.
So Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News Desk.
And first from the Fox News Desk this Tuesday afternoon, Hillary Clinton's email headaches are not going away yet, with the controversy about to get another round of headlines nationwide. Fox News has now confirmed the FBI will soon make public part of its report on the investigation. And we expect that will include notes from an interview with the Democratic presidential nominee herself. This is all in response to Freedom of Information Act requests from the media. Last month, FBI Director James Comey said he would not recommend charges against Hillary Clinton over her use of an email server, a private server, when she was the Secretary of State. The Director Comey called Secretary Clinton's use of that server extremely careless. But he said there is no evidence that she meant to break any laws. Agents interviewed Secretary Clinton for hours before deciding to close the case, and soon we might see what she had to say. Her critics blasted the Justice Department's decision not to file charges. The Republican rival Donald Trump tweeted, "The system is rigged." Republicans in Congress called Director Comey to testify and explain his decision. They also demanded to see copies of the FBI's notes. A lot of them, of course, are classified, so they won't be part of this coming release. For her part, Secretary Clinton said she regrets using that private email server, but she denies that she broke any laws. Still, you can bet Secretary Clinton's critics will comb over every word of whatever the FBI makes public. And that's Fox Top Story. Catherine Herridge on it live in Washington for us this afternoon. Hi, Catherine.
Shepard contacts say portions of the investigative file could be released as early as this week, possibly tomorrow, but they emphasize the review is ongoing, and a short time ago the White House said they are not involved.
I've seen those reports. I can tell you that the White House did not consult with the FBI about that decision or any of the other decisions that they've made in terms of handling some of the investigative material.
Based on the Freedom of Information Act request, we are expecting the summary of Clinton's FBI interview known by agents as a 302. The FBI does not routinely record interviews, and when Clinton was questioned at FBI headquarters over the July 4th weekend, that was also the case. We also expect the notes from the FBI agents who did the interview, and we expect some records will have sections blacked out for security reasons. Those are called redactions. A former senior FBI official said in most cases the FBI agents' notes are very thorough and can reveal a lot about the interview as well as the subject chapter.
What's the backstory here, Catherine?
Well, Republicans who read the investigative file in a secure facility on Capitol Hill said their version also had sections blacked out, but based on what they could read, FBI agents did not press Clinton very hard. And remember, FBI Director James Comey said he did not recommend criminal charges because there was no evidence of criminal intent to move classified records outside secure government channels. But Republicans allege that line of questioning was never pursued.
Remember, James Comey said she was not indicted because he didn't have sufficient evidence on the issue of intent. I didn't see any questions on the issue of intent. There's no question she handled them negligently or extremely carelessly. He said he didn't go forward with charges because she didn't have specific criminal intent. I didn't see any questions on that. She said she did it for convenience, but I didn't see the follow-up questions in the interview I read.
The senior Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, has said the Republicans are desperate to keep the email issue alive, given the FBI did not recommend criminal charges, and the Republicans cannot accept that there was no intention to break the law and that Clinton and her aides were careless with government secrets. Chap.
Catherine Herridge in Washington. Catherine, thank you. Let's bring in John Bussey, associate editor of the Wall Street Journal. What do we expect here?
Well, the drip, drip, drip just keeps on dripping, right? This is bad for the Clinton campaign because they can't get the email story out of the news. They're saying, look, we're very happy that this is happening because some of the elements of the testimony have been leaked selectively, and it's made the Clinton campaign look bad. Now it's going to all be out there, and people can kind of make their own assessment. But it's kind of one day after another, sort of the next chapter of the email story that they kind of hope will go away at this point. Not going away at all. This is going to be fly-specked. There's, as you guys are reporting, there's going to be notes from the testimony that she gave. CNN says that the document that was actually sent to the Justice Department, the 30 pages that Director Comey sent to the Justice Department saying, we're not going to pursue criminal charges, so we don't recommend it, that also is going to be released, and so it's going to be fly-specked and kept in the news for several more news cycles.
Like 42 pages total. When do we expect it?
Yeah, there are some reports saying that it could be out as early as tomorrow, but whenever it is out, it's going to generate yet more news cycles on exactly, what's in the reports, and they're going to be read a variety of different ways. You just heard the congressman say, "Hey, look, did they really press her on the issue of intent?" It's going to generate its own kind of news foment. The Clinton campaign, though, says, hey, we're kind of happy this is happening because maybe this is going to let us put this finally to rest.
The overriding accusation from the critics is, here's the State Department, here's the Clinton Foundation, can't really tell where one ends and the other begins, and the accusation is that the email was her way for those in charge of the two to keep in communications without going through government servers.
Yeah, and also for private emails. She wanted one device so that she could get all of her emails. And that's fine so long as there's nothing classified that crosses those servers, which, as it turns out, there was. At a minimum, you're going to get the reprising of how the FBI considered this extremely careless. Those are very powerful words to carry into the months ahead of the November election.
The other side of the political equation, the Trump camp, is like, this is all crooked. And this feels like the kind of thing that there will be no resolution of this. Those who think there was nefarious intent here will continue to believe so. And then this carries on into the new administration. And if it's President Clinton, we can't expect this to just melt away like butter.
Yeah, you can almost expect and count on that happening because it's in the interest of the Trump campaign to keep this in the news. It's in the interest of the Republican Party to keep this in the news. But it somehow also just manages to stay in the news, independent of what they're doing. This is not the Trump campaign coming after these documents. This is media organizations like yours and mine, seeking to, Reuters and CNN, seeking to get the documents to be able to judge for the public's in the interest of the public and for ourselves, whether or not this was an investigation that was as aggressive as the FBI says it was.
John Bussey from Wall Street Journal and WSJ.com. John, thank you. Clinton's running mate Tim Kaine on the campaign trail in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania today. Senator Kaine went after Donald Trump during a speech on the banks of Lake Erie in the northwestern part of the state, obviously. Kaine criticized Trump for not releasing his own tax return, saying he's hiding something. And a new survey out from Monmouth University today shows Secretary Clinton leading Donald Trump by 8 points in Pennsylvania. Meantime, Clinton is on a 3-day fundraising swing in the Hamptons on New York's Long Island. Mike Emanuel is live, Lancaster, Pennsylvania this afternoon, where Kaine is scheduled to make a stop later today. What else did Kaine say about Donald Trump?
Well, Senator Tim Kaine says that Donald Trump thinks the American people are gullible and suckers. And here in the Keystone State, Kaine appealed to voters to avoid getting tricked by Trump.
The Trump campaign just feels like Trump's next big con. His next big con. He's hiding his tax return. He's hiding his financial bill of health. He's trying to cover up his web of foreign engagements and conflicts of interest. And he won't even release credible information about his health. Donald Trump, it's time for you to come clean.
Trump, of course, has said that he will not release his tax returns while he's being audited. His doctor also issued a letter that has gotten a lot of attention saying that if elected, Donald Trump will be the healthiest person ever elected president. Shep?
And we're learning more about Clinton's debate strategy today?
Well, that's right. A source outside the Clinton campaign, a Democratic source, confirms to Fox News that the Clinton campaign is going through essentially talking to psychologists and also the co-author of Trump's book, Art of the Deal, trying to find Trump's greatest insecurities to use them in the first presidential debate. Our Democratic source notes there is a huge opposition research team at the Clinton campaign going through essentially 4 decades worth of Trump records, trying to find a few nuggets that Hillary Clinton can bring up in the first presidential debate, trying to knock him off his game. The thought being many Americans won't remember if Clinton were to overwhelm Trump with policy, but would likely remember if there are a moment or two when Trump loses his cool. So this source confirming a report first in the New York Times about the search for Donald Trump's insecurities to use it as material in that first upcoming presidential debate. Shep?
Mike Emanuel, Lancaster, PA, thank you. He's set to give his long-awaited speech tomorrow night, 6 p.m. local time on the West Coast. That's 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, so prime time on Fox News Channel. It's a speech he was supposed to deliver last week but postponed it. Of course, immigration has not only been the core of Trump's campaign since day one. His calls for mass deportation force helped him fend off more than a dozen challengers during the Republican primaries. Then last week, he told Hannity he was open to letting some people stay in the United States. He called it a softening of his immigration platform, although he also says he's still tough on immigration. Carl Cameron, Everett, Washington this afternoon, where Donald Trump's set to hold a rally tonight. What are we expecting from this speech, Carl?
Well, he's got a lot of work to do. A lot of the conservative base that has been supporting him was a little bit alarmed to hear him say that he was softening his immigration positions. And a lot of the swing voters and the more moderate Republicans who may have misgivings with the tough talk and the bombastic rhetoric are looking to be courted and appealed to as well. And Mr. Trump has basically put himself in a box. Of the 3 main issues of his immigration position, he's said that all of them amount to negotiating positions. He'll make a big deal when the time comes, but that suggests that compromise is possible. So he started out by saying there was going to be a ban on Muslims, temporary albeit, but visitors and new immigrants would not be allowed. That's been changed to extreme vetting. Then he started talking about, he also talked about building a wall, one that was going to go from the Pacific to the Gulf, and it was going to be a great wall, a high wall with a beautiful golden door in it. Now he's acknowledged that there's mountains where it makes it impractical to build a wall in some places, and it would be more practical to use technology. So that sort of has modified the whole idea of a great big beautiful wall. And then comes the deportation of the 11 million illegal immigrants, undocumented aliens who are already here. And while he said he might soften that, then he said that there would be no legalization, which means if somebody wants to be a legal citizen or just legalized, they would have to leave the country and come back. But what if they don't? That's an unanswered question. Would they be rounded up? He has not completely obliterated the idea of softening. So these are unanswered questions. Those are the things that have to be resolved tomorrow night. in order to get any indication as to who he's going to be more wedded to, the very, very conservative base of the Republican Party, or will he really do that outreach and appeal for those voters who can help him get over the top and win the 270 electoral college votes that it takes to win, which neither party can do by itself. You got to go outside the boundaries of your own tents. Shep?
Carl Cameron live, Everett, Washington. Thank you. A surrogate for Donald Trump's campaign says he's sorry for tweeting a cartoon of Hillary Clinton in blackface. The cartoon accuses Hillary Clinton of pandering to black voters. The surrogate who sent it is Pastor Mark Burns. He is black. After coming under fire for the controversial image, Burns apologized last night in a live Periscope feed. He apologized again today, but said he stands by the message he intended to send. He tweeted, "I'm so sorry for the offensive blackface image of Hillary Clinton, but I stand by the message that we blacks are being used by Democrats for votes." Continuing coverage of the immigration speech, can he stick to one message on this topic? The U.S. editor for the Wall Street Journal joins us live, plus Glenn Hall is here. Glenn Hall is the U.S. editor for the Wall Street Journal. What are we hearing about what details we're going to get?
Precious little, right? I have seen in other cases where information started to trickle out by now. It may be that they're still working out some of the details, but I think it's all going to come down to one basic issue that needs to be figured out: mass deportation or not.
And if so, how?
That's right.
Well, he previously said, and he was very emphatic about it, this was in November, there will be mass deportation squads. It won't be pretty, it won't be easy, but we're going to kick them out. It played beautifully in the primary. It's not working well politically now, but you abandon that. And the wall, which Carl Cameron just reported, he's vacillating on the wall now. They had said that's a cornerstone of the immigration policy. I don't know what they're going to do, but if they back away from that, it leaves part of this base, this nationalist base, in a world of hurt.
Yeah, sometimes you get confused between what Donald Trump is saying metaphorically, as in, I will start here and this will be my negotiating position, and other times where it was a firm line in the sand that his supporters really, really wanted him to keep. And we're trying to see, where does he come out with this new immigration policy? The things that he said in the last couple of weeks and his surrogates in the last couple of days, sticking to the idea that the border must be secured as a core principle. Then after that, any bad actors that are illegal in this country have to be out of the country right away. Deported. And then what do you do with the rest? This has been the big question. And, it could be, Shep, that it comes down to a timeline scenario where he says you don't have to, and it's not practical to deport them all at once. We can do this in a more humane way, but if they want citizenship, they're going to have to leave and come back. So you can imagine that some kind of nuance like that to allow both sides of this equation, those voters he's reaching out to and those he wants to keep, to see themselves under the same tent.
A little something for everyone.
It might be something like that.
Sometimes foreign leaders give us some things for domestic consumption and some things for international consumption. Here, it's almost like we're talking about two different worlds. There's this largely white nationalist group that's with him on those immigration matters, and then there's the rest of the country that reads the Constitution and goes, we can't really do that, and realizes we let all these people in here to do work that Americans wouldn't do and that Americans still won't do. So constructing this policy in a way that works against Secretary Clinton is a formidable challenge, and I wonder if you're right, that they haven't really come up with the whole dang thing yet. Because he's said the policy a million times, but now he's just changing it.
They want to, it's all down to the specifics, which is something that Donald Trump has typically avoided.
Yeah.
In this particular issue, he has been very specific and very strident, and how far back he can walk without losing voters that have been with him all along, and how far out he can reach to bring in those new voters, that's the nuance, and this has not been a campaign built on nuance so far.
No. This will be 9 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow. So in Megyn Kelly's hour, from coast to coast, here on Fox News Channel, we'll have live Team Fox coverage of that, and of course Hannity will follow like always. Thank you, Glenn.
More into Donald Trump, going to get him rattled. To Fox's Mike Emanuel in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with the latest. Mike.
Yeah, hi, Stuart. There is some traditional study by Hillary Clinton, traditional preparation for the upcoming presidential debates. But Fox has confirmed they are also looking into some of Donald Trump's biggest insecurities, hoping to fluster him on that debate stage. Fox has confirmed via a Democratic source that the Clinton team is speaking with psychologists and others trying to figure out some hot-button issues for Trump. The hope for the Clinton team is trying to bait Trump into making blunders in the first presidential debate. Fox has told the Clinton campaign has even consulted with Trump's co-author of his book, Art of the Deal, Tony Schwartz, trying to see what he may know about Trump's hot-button or sensitive subjects. We spoke to Schwartz today, but he declined to comment. Our Democratic source told Fox, as an example, quote, Rubio's hands comment that back in February took Trump off his game, whereas he's well prepared for accusations of bankruptcy and other matters he's had to answer for in the past. The idea is creating several memorable moments that much of the country will be buzzing about the day after that first presidential debate. Stuart?
Thanks very much indeed, Mike. Donald Trump has a problem with Colin Kaepernick's protest at the national anthem, but the NFL could have a problem of its own. Opening weekend starting on Sunday, September the 11th, and unlike professional basketball, the NFL does not have a rule prohibiting players from taking a pass on the national anthem. To Harlan Hill and Gillian Melcher. Just heard that the 49ers plan to start Kaepernick in the last preseason game, I think it's Thursday night, in San Diego. What do you think will be the reaction to him on the field?
Oh, I think he's going to be booed.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be booed. And I think he needs to back up. Look, this guy's been the recipient of every advantage the American dream has to offer. And he's betrayed the sacrifice of millions of American veterans and you know, the founding fathers that came before us. So it is disgusting. It's repugnant. And the NFL needs to take a hard stand against this.
Well, what about the idea of a new rule? You stand for the anthem. The NBA has that rule. Why doesn't the NFL? Because if they don't, they've got a real problem on September the 11th, maybe.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the timing on this could not be worse with it being September 11th. I think it's just smart business to have that rule. And I say that because if you look at what happened last year with Mizzou, their football players walking off the field in protest of many similar issues. We did a records request, found that ticket sales down by more than $1 million. Merchandise sales down pretty significantly. Sports fans don't want their sports to be politicized. And if they do, they want it to have a pro-American bent. I think this is a terrible business decision if they allow it.
Now, when Kaepernick appears in this last preseason game in San Diego, if he is booed and given a very hard time by the crowd, that could be a test case, both for the 49ers and the NFL. If he gets that very negative reaction, then they may change the rule, you think?
Absolutely. And you pair that with the fact that, and not to get too down in the weeds, but he's not the player he once was. And so this may provide a convenient out for the team to sideline him.
But if he's sidelined, is not the starting quarterback, he then turns around, I'm just supposing here, he turns around and says, see, racism, there you go.
I mean, this is totally the wrong issue to stake out. I mean, what country besides America has these principles, natural rights? It's based on that. You know, if he's going to target and try to be a spokesperson for a complaint, this is the wrong symbol to do it with, I think.
Would you both agree that
Big
opinion is beginning to harden against Kaepernick? Gillian?
Absolutely.
This is one issue that absolutely everybody's coming together on.
Good heavens, unity. Extraordinary. Harlan Hill, Gillian Melcher, very much. Thanks very much indeed. All right.